Welcome to the Fantasy Champions Fantasy Football Podcast. Here's your host, Morgan Colby and Rick Lemon.
Oh, welcome, Fantasy Champions Fantasy Football Podcast. Hopefully you enjoyed Thursday Night Football.
Hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully. I'm getting distracted by things on my phone already, and we're not even 5 seconds into the show.
You're legit like 5 seconds in the show.
I'm just like, oh, okay. All right. Rick, you talking? No. Oh, all right. Anyway, welcome to Fantasy Champions Fantasy Football Podcast. My name is Morgan Colby. I got Rick Lemon on the other side of the screen. Hopefully you did enjoy Thursday Night Football. It wasn't something that I would assume would be enjoyed, but last week on our pre-recorded show, the Giants and the Eagles, what was it? The Giants and not the Giants and Eagles, the Giants and Washington football team ended up being a real good game.
That was right.
So if last night's game was the best game you've seen all season, whatever. I still think it sucks.
And bro, you not excited to watch the Panthers Texans?
I am excited to watch DJ Moore, Christian McCaffrey, and Sam Darnold.
Davis Mills?
Not at all. That was like I did scouting on the quarterback position, and the last guy I did was Davis Mills.
Yeah. I'm just saying something.
Yeah. Anyway, so today we got trade targets for week 3 of the fantasy football season. It should be really interesting. We'll go through, I think it's 5 guys. Last year we did 3. I was looking back at last year's episodes, and we did 3. We'll give you 5 this year in the same amount of time. I think that's pretty effective. So, anyway, before we do that, check our website, fantasychampions.com. Follow us on social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. Just find us on those platforms. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or any other podcast platforms, please leave a review and share this podcast with your friends. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe, click the bell for noties, and then like and comment down below who you're targeting in trades this week. You ready to get this popping, Rick?
Yeah.
All right. We'll try to keep this concise because, it's a Friday, and you're getting ready for your weekend.
You're getting whipped.
Excuse me?
Nothing.
Okay. I won't judge. So let's start off with the first guy who I think should be relatively quick considering he's already been on the list once.
Yeah.
But it's shake and bake Saquon Barkley.
My guy.
Yeah, so for the second week in a row, as projected when we were talking about trade targets last week, Saquon did not have a good game.
Mm-hmm.
He did not against and
8 face points.
He did, however,
improve.
Well, no. Let me look
to
see if
he improved.
Efficiency wise, did he improve?
Well, yes, but he also had like a 40-yard run.
That's fair. Okay, so that's what he does, though. That's what he does. All right. So anyway, he did improve efficiency-wise. He was more involved in the game. He had 16 touches or 15 touches.
15 touches. Yeah.
His snap percentage in week 1, when they had him going in on a limited basis, was 48%. The game this week against Washington was 84% snap percentage. So basically just flipped the numbers, and he ended up with a higher snap percentage this week. On average when he plays, it's usually right around 85%. 85 to 90%. So he got a full gamut of work. It was kind of a shootout, so it wasn't necessarily that he got game scripted out, but this was not a full workload. This was a full workload game to me for Saquon Barkley. Do I still think they were limiting him a little bit in terms of touches? Yes. But either way. So he hasn't had a good 2 weeks. And I think everyone is kind of in the same boat where they're like, this Atlanta game is the game.
Mm-hmm.
Where the Saquon truthers like Rick are just, this is it. He's going to pop off and never look back. And then there's people like me who are like, man, if this guy blows, what do I do with him?
Well, yeah. I mean, if that happens, then I think we go in a different direction. This is going to be a big week for Saquon. It's against Atlanta. It's a good matchup. He should get more carries this week.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, he had an 84% snap percentage. He just didn't get a whole lot of touches. They used him when he was on the field. They were going to use him. So I don't know. I mean, we'll see how they use him against Atlanta, but the expectation is that he's going to be the workhorse that he was a year or two ago, where he's going to get 20 touches. And versus Atlanta, he should be the Saquon Barkley we all know. And I said this back in July, and I tweeted it a while ago too, that like the first week of the season was going to be a bad week. And people were going to be like, he stinks. And then the following week is a Thursday night game. So they're not just going to rush him into it. They'll give him a little bit more work,
right?
But he's still going to be limited. That week 3 should be the first week where he is big. He might even still be limited, but it's going to be the closest thing you'll see to a workhorse. And there is a lot of people right now that are really down on Saquon, that are trying to get rid of him, don't want him, all this stuff. And this is a great time to buy him. I was actually thinking about trades in my head that I could do in a dynasty league I'm in for him right now or before Sunday, when he could potentially get 20 plus fantasy points.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a big conversation with Saquon that I've had to have in my head, because I would say I'm very close to acquiring him in a league, but then very far away. It's like one of those things where it's like, it'll get the deal done, but I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
So either way, the big thing for me with Barkley, Rick loves Barkley. And I think what everyone, including a lot of fantasy owners, would say or think in their minds is that Saquon is the Saquon from 3 years ago.
Mm.
And I don't know that that's the case anymore. You can't look at him in fantasy like that. So if you're going to trade for him, or you're going to trade him away to some team, you can't treat him like he's a top 3 back. And I don't think Saquon Barkley, with a full workload this year, can be a top 3 back. I just don't think that's possible for him. I think he could be 7 to 10. But in the context of the whole situation for the Giants, there's too much for him to overcome, especially with the knee injuries and the hip injuries and all the crap that he's had to go through over the last couple years. He's not the same running back he was when Eli Manning was tossing the ball all over the field, even though he blew. So some of the variables that I look at with Saquon is, A, the offensive line blows. We already know that. B, quarterback doesn't like to dump the ball off to the running back position, literally at all. I think 3 to 4 targets a game is probably the max that Saquon will get with Daniel Jones at quarterback. Whereas when you go back and you look at the Eli Manning days, Eli just dumped it to him every single play. So there's a massive difference.
He had 91 catches in his rookie season.
Yeah, and there's a massive difference there between Daniel Jones and Eli Manning. And I had to look at the numbers. The last time Saquon had a really, really decent season was with Eli Manning, and it was when Eli Manning, like you said, 91 catches, was dumping it off. Was it 91 targets or 91 catches?
91 catches. He had 121 targets.
When Eli Manning was just dumping it off to him. And then the next year, I think he was RB10. And
he only played
RB7.
In that year, he missed 3 games. He was RB10 with 3 games.
That's what I was going to say, is that he was RB7 in points per game or something like that. So the big thing, most of that season was with Daniel Jones as a rookie. The year after, and the small sample size that we've seen Saquon,
which was the ACL,
very small sample size, it just hasn't looked the same with him. So the offense blows. Daniel Jones likes to run, doesn't like to dump it off, and the offensive line is terrible. The only thing Saquon really has going for him at this point is, and I heard this on another podcast the other day, is talent. Really immensely great talent. I would say he's the most talented. When healthy and running at full capacity, he is probably the most talented running back in the NFL.
Yeah.
But
I mean, he was the second overall pick in a quarterback-heavy draft.
Right.
Was it second or third overall? I think it was second, because Sam Darnold went third.
Second overall.
Yeah.
But not to go too long into this explanation, but for me, so I think that's the big thing with Barkley, is that you can't buy him in fantasy football buy him right now, get him on your team, because I think that when he has these matchups against Atlanta and later in the season against Dallas and Los Angeles and Miami and some of these other matchups, I believe it's Miami. No, he does not play Miami. Whoops. Yeah, he does. Okay, never mind. He does play Miami. But anyway, when he has these easy matchups, he's going to eat and he's going to have a really good game. And I think he can overcome some of the bad games. I just think the combination of things for Saquon makes it so that he's not that same top 5 running back without, at least coming off the year with his ACL, without the weapons and the good offense, if you will.
Yeah.
So those are kind of my thoughts on Saquon. Like, don't overpay for him, but it's definitely a buy window, because if he doesn't perform well, especially against Atlanta, I still think it might be worth throwing in an offer for him. But if he goes out against Atlanta and gets 30, it's going to be impossible to buy him. Absolutely impossible.
Well, that's exactly. And I think that is a possibility. I'm not going to say it's going to happen, but I think even if he gets 20, let's say he gets 24 points.
Yeah.
You think anyone who drafted Barkley is going to want to trade him?
Oh no, they're going to think he's here.
Right.
He's going to be like McCaffrey. If you're asking me about next season, I feel a little bit better about him. And I think late season Barkley is going to end up getting a lot better as well. I just don't think this year he's going to be that top 5 guy that everyone wanted, because he's coming off the ACL injury and there's other elements involved in that. So, honestly, he's wasting his career in the Giants organization, if we're being honest.
Yeah.
But either way,
kind of is.
Buy Saquon
Which
Barkley,
is weird.
Again.
They drafted Barkley second overall, like we said, in a year where they had a 40-year-old Eli Manning, and there was 5 quarterbacks in the first round.
Yikes!
I have no idea what they were thinking, but
I could never. The talent of Barkley obviously was legitimate, but it's almost like drafting Kyle Pitts if you're Atlanta with the 4th overall pick.
Yeah,
something
like that.
They needed defense. They needed offensive line. They needed anything, really. And they chose the tight end position. I understand he's talented, but it makes absolutely no sense.
You're right. Like a tight end.
Barkley getting drafted number 2 by the Giants 5 years ago, it makes no sense.
It really does make no sense.
But either way, buy Barkley. I know it sounds like I don't like him. It's an expectations thing. Don't go buy him as the situation where you're like, oh my God, he's going to be a top 5 running back. That's not what you're going to get out of him production-wise. He might have some top 5 weeks, but he's not going to have a top 5 season. So, do that with that in mind. He'll be a low-end RB1, and that's the expectation, and that's how much you should spend on him.
Yeah.
Anyway, moving on to the next guy, and I guess you could put these two in the same bucket, these 2 players that we talk about next. But A.J. Brown of the Tennessee Titans, their offense has been grossly...
gross.
Yeah, grossly gross. It's been not good. And they did get a lot better efficiency-wise through the air, but... You can see that in I think Derrick Henry has 11 targets in 2 weeks or something ridiculous like that. They're targeting Derrick Henry because they physically cannot get the ball to anyone else, and it's whatever. So Julio had a good week last week, but A.J. Brown did not. He had a 14-point week against Arizona. He had a 7-point week this week. He's had 8 and 9 targets in consecutive weeks, which is good news for the A.J. Brown manager. But he hasn't been very efficient with those opportunities. So in that target share, I think it's 17 targets. He's only caught 7 passes. So he's under 50%. I believe I got that math right. The quick math in my small brain. So it's and I don't know if it has anything to do with the quality of target from Ryan Tannehill, because he's struggled this year. But if that can improve, obviously A.J. Brown is a ridiculous buy. And I think that a lot of people you draft him in the home league in the 2nd round, correct?
Yeah, it was the last pick of the 2nd round.
So I feel like a lot of people did draft him in the 2nd round. They're looking at that 2nd round value. I was talking to a team in a league this week trying to make a trade, and they were kind of like, oh, well, I used a first-round pick on this player, and I'm like, yeah, well, it's the second week of the season. Draft
Right.
picks don't matter anymore. Like, production does, and that production of this player has not been through the roof. So, for me, when you look at A.J. Brown, it's a perfect opportunity to buy because I think he is poised to obviously be. I've called him a top 5 wide receiver. I don't know if he can do that this year, unless the target share, the target share is there.
I mean,
unless the
it's there, yeah.
Unless the efficiency improves, the efficiency, not inefficiency. I think I said that wrong.
Which last year though, that's what it was. He was very efficient.
Yeah,
he just wasn't getting more. I think he had over 10 targets or over 9 targets once, and he reached to 9 targets like 3 times the whole season. He's already done that, and he had 8 targets. So,
right,
like the targets are there. It's just the efficiency, and from what I've seen, it's a little bit of both. Tannehill threw a deep ball to him that he just dropped. Yeah, that he had that would have been like a 60-yard catch. That was tough. But then there was a few other ones where Tannehill just missed him, and he was open. And he just threw it over his head.
I don't know what's going on with Tennessee. I think they have a new offensive coordinator and they have some new stuff going on there. So obviously, I think they're just trying to adjust and figure out what they're actually going to do. It does look like, if we're being honest, I mean, clearly they want to get the ball to Henry. But because he had 35 carries last week against Seattle. But he only had in the week
insane.
The week prior, I mean, it was a bad game script, but he had 17 carries, 3 catches, 6 for 6, bro, in the passing game for 55 yards. That's actually pretty good. Way to go, Derrick Henry, getting involved. But Tannehill's been throwing the football a lot more than he normally does.
But it's inefficient, though.
No, it's been inefficient, but he has 75 passes in 2 games, which usually he's right around, like, if you look at last season's numbers, he was right around, like, an average of I would say 29 to 30 passes per game. And right now he's reached 35 and 40. So twice to start the season, I believe he only went over 35 passing attempts in 2020 about 4 times. And he's done it twice already this season. So, I think that's good news for A.J. Brown and Julio Jones because they are passing the football a lot more. And like you said, if those drop passes for A.J. Brown or the missed throws by Ryan Tannehill, if those things start cleaning themselves up over the next couple weeks, A.J. Brown 100% can be a top-level wide receiver. And it's worth trading him. It's worth trying to acquire him in all of your leagues because right now the buying price is going to be so low because he hasn't had a really big game. And as soon as this guy... Indianapolis could be a week where he just goes off. So it's like if this guy goes off and gets 25 fantasy points, you're not getting him.
Right. Exactly.
I can't get him from Rick at all once that happens.
No. Definitely not.
Yeah, I would buy A.J. Brown on that alone.
Yeah, A.J. Brown is like a classic. Starts slow, but you see the targets, and he's going to be a buy because he's going to bounce back. Same with the next guy.
Yeah, the next guy is DK Metcalf, and Metcalf he's had 2 decent weeks.
Yeah, he hasn't been bad.
He hasn't been bad at all. He has 16 targets in 2 games. He had a touchdown in the first one that kind of salvaged a bad game, if you want to say that. And then the next game, he had 11 targets, 6 catches for 53 yards. And in a PPR and half PPR, that obviously those targets are very sexy. But Metcalf has a very specific role. And I really do think Tyler Lockett is the wide receiver 1 in Seattle.
He is.
So he has a very specific role. He's a guy that they want to get the ball downfield on the outside of the hashes. You know what I mean? They want to throw it deep to him and get him on out routes, essentially. Mm-hmm. And you can see that in last year's reception perception. It's kind of the same thing, obviously, this year. So he has been good, but he hasn't been as good as people would have wanted to, or they haven't wanted to get. The production that he is providing has not been something that people expected from him when they drafted him as top 5 wide receiver.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, while he's been good, he hasn't been great. So I think it's an opportunity to buy him right now, where I think he's mid-range wide receiver too.
A 30-point game.
Right, before he gets a 30-point game and everyone starts getting sweaty. Just jump on the nervousness. These two guys are just jump on the nervousness of fantasy managers.
Yeah, Metcalf is such like a big game type player where he'll get 2 touchdowns and 100 yards receiving and just explodes. And he obviously hasn't had that yet this year, but he will. I mean, 11 targets. So there's literally nothing that's showing that Metcalf can't. He just hasn't done it yet. Sure, Lockett has been great, but last year they were both very good as well. Didn't Lockett finish as a wide receiver like 9 last season?
What's his name was 7? DK Metcalf.
Tyler Lockett?
No. Lockett was wide receiver 9.
Yeah,
DK
that's
Metcalf
what I was saying.
was wide receiver 7.
Right.
Something like that.
Yeah, so both guys can succeed, so that's not the issue. They actually have the exact same amount of targets through 2 weeks. It's just Lockett has connected on the deep balls and the big plays, while Metcalf hasn't yet.
At some point, Metcalf will, and when that happens, like we said, it's going to be...
Hopefully he'll be on your team when that happens.
Right, exactly. And then you won't sell him because you're like, I know.
Right.
Anyway... Yeah, so buy A.J. Brown, buy DK Metcalf. Let's talk about the next guy, Javonte Williams. I just call him Javonte because
this is a big one.
This is a really, I feel like any given week at this point is the week where this guy will just take over. Because week 1, there was a really good run for Melvin Gordon and everyone who, It
was at the end of it was like trash time.
It was trash time, and everyone was like, oh my God, Melvin Gordon, he's back. I was like, okay.
He's the true starter.
I was like, yeah, he's the true starter. But no, I think right now, yes, he is the starter. I don't think that's gonna hold. And there's a couple of reasons why I think you should buy Javonte. I feel like he's returning that 7th round, 6th round value. So it's like whatever. He hasn't scored a touchdown. He had a go Google it. On Twitter or on Google or whatever. I said Google it on Twitter. Go look it up on Twitter and Google it on Google. But anyway, I've done way too many things today. My words are not coming out.
I thought you were going to say I've done way too much.
I've done way
cocaine,
too much alcohol, whatever. No, I've done way too much work today, and my brain is absolutely fried. So words are hard for me. Anyway.
That's okay.
So, yes, buying Javonte right now, he's basically had, I want to say, a 50-50 split in snap percentage. I don't know that it's with Melvin Gordon because I haven't seen Gordon's snap percentage.
It is actually, yeah.
Is it a 50-50?
Yeah, because in week 1, they were each 50.
Okay.
And last week, Williams had 41% and Melvin Gordon was at 59%.
Yeah, so Gordon got a little bit more work because he had a better week, is what I would assume.
From week 1, yeah.
Yeah, so, yeah, I think, and I think Javonte had a much better week this week, 13 carries, 64 yards. The only area of concern I have with him is that he hasn't been super involved in the passing game.
Yeah.
So, I mean, obviously you'd like to see that, but that's not going to happen when you're only getting 50% of the snaps. I think at some point this season there is going to be, this isn't Javonte isn't playing well, go buy him now, like the conversations we've been having with the other guys. This is Javonte is going to be really good. At some point this year he's going to take the job from Melvin Gordon, or Melvin Gordon's just going to get outright hurt, and Javonte's going to take over and be really good. Because from what I've seen from him so far this year, and the opportunities that he has had, it's been real good. It's looked really, really good. And the other thing that is an absolute buy for me is that when that time happens, when he takes over, I guarantee you it'll be somewhere around weeks 8 through 10. And then the end of the season is Los Angeles, Kansas City, Detroit, Cincinnati, the Raiders, and the Chargers to get you all the way to your fantasy championship.
Yeah.
That schedule is awful.
Yep.
Which great for him. Awful. It's an awful group of
great playoff schedule for
great playoff schedule for Javonte. Awful defenses. So I think this is going to be a really good stretch of games for Javonte Williams, and he could put up some serious fantasy points. You just have to be willing to purchase him now. I got him in a league this week for Marquise Hollywood Brown, and you can judge me in the comments for whatever that is. I don't think that's a bad deal.
I think that's a good deal.
So, but just to give you kind of the market on him, you don't need to spend the capital that you would have to get Saquon
Well, right.
to get Javonte. So it's a easier trade. You just sit him on your bench and you know what you have in him. So that's why I would buy him at this point.
Yeah, no, same. Everything you said is valid. I think this week is a week. Every week going forward, it's going to be the Javonte watch to see if he feels like he takes over.
Yeah.
Although then again, who knows how the Broncos are going to do it? They might give Javonte most of the work one week and everybody gets pumped, and then they go back to Melvin Gordon and split.
Yeah.
Which would be gross. But this week against the Jets could be a lot of people think it's a breakout week. A lot of people are even willing to start Javonte Williams this week against the Jets. I think it's very possible that he breaks out this week, and if he does, you're not going to be able to trade for him. But there's also a chance he doesn't struggle, but Baltimore, Pittsburgh is a tough back-to-back games there after that, but then it gets easy again. So it's inevitable where he takes over the job. It's just a matter of when.
Yeah.
And I think it's very possible that happens this week.
Yeah. I think it will take Denver a little bit longer to figure that out.
Yeah.
And it could happen this week, but
I don't know if it necessarily happens this week, but I think he has a good week this week because it's the Jets, so maybe he gets his first touchdown.
Right.
And puts up double-digit fantasy points, and they're not going to want to trade him. Whoever owns him.
Yeah, so buy Javonte. Final guy, Jonathan Taylor, really quickly. I've been concerned with a couple of things, and this is what I was concerned about coming into the season, but he had a good week in week 1. 17 carries, 6 catches. When they put him on the field, they were getting work. His snap percentages are 55% and 45% the last 2 weeks.
Oh, it's the Naheem Hines.
What's freaking Naheem
Marlon
Hines?
Mack.
Marlon Mack's not even getting snaps.
Oh yeah, it is just mostly Naheem Hines.
He
He got 3 carries this week, I think, Marlon Mack.
Oh, frick me. Saddle him up.
Marlon Mack, 19%.
And Jonathan Taylor, by the way, has been inefficient with the work that he's gotten. So I think the early part of the season, like when you look at the numbers for Jonathan Taylor, you see the 50% snap percentage on the season. You see 3.2 yards per carry. You see some of the bad efficiency metrics that this guy has. And that would lead, I think, a person to think maybe the opportunity is not going to be there at some point. Maybe Marlon Mack starts taking some reps back. Maybe Naheem Hines just takes all the passing game work. And I think it strikes a lot of fear into people. There's a couple of really big things for Jonathan Taylor. I don't think that's going to hold on for the longest time. You look at the game against Los Angeles, you look at the game against Seattle. In both of those games, they've had to play from behind. And Jonathan Taylor, not that he's game script dependent, but they're going to Naheem Hines is their pass catching back. And if you drafted Jonathan Taylor, you expect that. So, while Jonathan Taylor will get pass catching opportunities in this offense, to expect him to get all of it is not really going to happen. Now, what is going to happen is he's going to get 15 or more carries per game and probably like 2 to 3 catches per game, which is about 18 opportunities against teams that they will match up well against, and have a good opportunity to win and maybe take a lead against Miami, against Houston. Probably it'll be a closer game against Tennessee, but not necessarily a shootout. The Jets, that'll be an easy game where Jonathan Taylor can just rush it for 40 times. Jacksonville. So it's like you look at some of the games that he has on his schedule, and there's definitely opportunities for Jonathan Taylor to be on the field a lot more. But what you're buying here is the panic. You're buying the panic that Jonathan Taylor has not been that good so far this season, has not gotten the opportunities that you would think. I mean, he's gotten the opportunities, has not gotten the snap percentage that you want or the efficiency that you want on the ground, which will lead you to panic and maybe think that Marlon Mack's going to come in and take some work.
Yeah.
But I'd buy him on the panic.
Marlon Mack had 5 carries this week.
Marlon Mack.
So, yeah. No, this is why we were like, we're not drafting Jonathan Taylor in the top 5. Mm-hmm. Or tops. Even he got to like RB6, and we were like, Like he was kind of like that late first round, early second.
Yeah. Because
we loved him when he was like pick 12, pick 13, but then he moved up to pick 6, and we're like, Yeah, they're gonna use Marlon Mack and Naheem Hines all year. This is not news. Like they are going to use all 3 of these guys. And, Taylor though is going to get the most work. He's actually still gotten a decent amount of touches, like you said. 16 touches this past week, and in week 1, he had 23 touches. So that's very good. And he was also stuffed at the goal line twice this week, so he had 2 separate chances to score touchdowns.
And he didn't.
He'll be fine. Once he plays better matchups, the Rams is a tough matchup. Once he plays better matchups, he's going to start scoring touchdowns. He's going to get 15, 20 face points a week, and everybody's going to freak out and be like, "Oh, I told you, Jonathan Taylor." So yeah, this is the time to trade for him while he's kind of not great, and people are like, "Oh my gosh, they're using Nyheim Hines in the passing game."
Yeah, right.
Like, yeah, they are.
Of course.
Right. So
anticipated.
Yeah, take advantage of that.
Yeah, and I think we'll see this week because I think week 1 Marlon Mack didn't even get a snap in the game.
In week 1, yeah.
In week 1. And then week 2, he had about 19 to 20% snap percentage. If the snap percentage keeps increasing for Marlon Mack, that would be concerning for Jonathan Taylor. If it continues to be 15 to 20%, he's basically just what who's that other running back? The third running back last year.
Oh, Jordan Wilkins.
Yeah, he's basically just Jordan Wilkins, essentially. Yeah. That role. So and you'll see weeks where Indianapolis has the lead and they're just gonna run and grind the clock. Those weeks you'll see him with 65-70% snap percentage. And then weeks where they're losing, you'll probably see him somewhere around 50%, which, you know what I mean, obviously is concerning. You want him on the field when they're in the lead, but he is the goal line back, like Rick said. 2 opportunities, didn't score. They're not going to give Hines goal line opportunities. I don't think they're going to give him much red zone opportunities unless it's third down, right? Third and long. Mm-hmm. So Jonathan Taylor is going to be in there inside the 20, and he's going to have opportunities. He is clearly the guy that you want in the backfield, obviously. And I think that with Carson Wentz healthy, I don't know how the man broke 2 ankles in 1 week.
That is like only Carson Wentz could do that.
Play.
Yeah.
Probably 2 guys on separate ankles. I don't know.
He literally rolled both ankles. That is hilarious.
He ran and he just rolled both. Only what is that?
So
Carson
ridiculous.
Wentz things. Anyway, I don't know if he's even going to play this week, but yeah, I mean, with Carson Wentz on the field, if he's on the field and he's not hurt, that makes it better for a guy like Jonathan Taylor to produce. And yeah, I think the long-term outlook on Jonathan Taylor, especially when you look at his schedule, is good.
Mm.
But what you want to take advantage of is panic. And Barkley, Brown, Taylor owners are panicking.
Yeah.
Metcalf people are like, okay, I can do it. I can take that.
Because they're used to it.
They're used to it. It's just, I think it's hard when you're looking at Metcalf and then you see Lockett just lighting up the field.
That's the thing that will get to people.
And they're like, why can't Metcalf do that? Well, it's because the ball bounces off his face mask. That's probably.
Doesn't Lockett, though, historically always have great starts to seasons? Like every year?
Yeah, generally speaking. I should have drafted him and then traded him after a couple of big games. So mad. I had him or Deontay Johnson. I didn't lose. Got good performance on both of them.
Yeah, in 2019, Lockett was like the wide receiver 2 through 9 weeks.
And then he disappeared.
Yeah, and then last year he kind of disappeared earlier, but he had a 45-point week in week 7, and then after that he was like 5, 6, 9, 17, 3, 9, 7, 5, 5, 27.
Wow.
So yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, there are your trade targets for week 3. Saquon Barkley, AJ Brown, DK Metcalf, Javonte Williams, Jonathan Taylor. Bring, bang, boom. Make sure you get these guys on your team before the Sunday games start this week, because once Brown, Metcalf, and Barkley go off, and Taylor too, you're never getting them. See you.
Exactly.
Enjoy your weekend.
Later.
Thank you for listening to the Fantasy Champions Podcast. Make sure you subscribe on iTunes and YouTube, and follow us on Twitter @TheFFChamps.